Good day, everybody. This is Father Pete Kazmarek, pastor of St. Francis of Assisi in Greenlawn, inviting you to share these thoughts with myself regarding the pilgrimage that's taking place this weekend. Pilgrimage really has been a part of Christian and Catholic history for the longest time, for many, many centuries. When Christianity first became a legal religion and people were able to identify themselves as Christians, a path was beaten quickly to the Holy Land. It was followed. In those days, only certain people really were able to go, either the hermits themselves or wealthy people or relatives with good connections. But nonetheless, the concept of pilgrimage to the Holy Land began really at the first moments that Christianity was able to really come out from the closets, come out from the catacombs, come out from hiding places and be practiced publicly. So what I'm saying about this is that pilgrimage really is an intrinsic part of our Catholic faith, our Catholic experience, our Catholic tradition. Okay, all through the Middle Ages, there were always pilgrimages to the Holy Land. The Crusades, which have been so maligned lately in so much literature, were really attempts to make it possible for pilgrims to get safely, with bodily safety, in and out of the Holy Land to see the places where Jesus walked and spoke and so forth, because there was a great deal of persecution breaking out after the Turks took over, and there was abductions, there were atrocities and so forth perpetrated against the pilgrims. So this is what the Pope's message was when he launched the First Crusade, which was really, in a certain sense, to safeguard pilgrims. When it was not possible for people to get to the Holy Land, soon enough the wonderful shrine of St. James of Compostela opened up in northern Spain, and trails were blazed from every single country, every single part of the countries, from Italy, from France, from Germany, way up in the Low Countries, England itself, all the way down through Spain, over the Pyrenees Mountains, and out toward the North Atlantic part of Spain to Santiago, St. James of Compostela. And so the Compostela pilgrimage became El Camino of the San Sepulchro, and you see how it all tumbled out after that. Lesser pilgrimages. When we had the Canterbury Tales written by Geoffrey Chaucer, and most of us studied a little bit of that in college, undergraduate English and so forth. When the April rains are over, everybody's going on pilgrimages. That's the opening paragraph of the famous Canterbury Tales. And of course, what were they? They were stories. The format was, they were the recordings of stories told by the pilgrims to entertain one another on their journey, again in pilgrimage, to St. Thomas of Becket, the martyr, the bishop martyr who resisted the encroachments of the monarchy on the rights of the church and suffered for it with his life. And so that's how this shrine at Canterbury developed. And of course, these people were on their way to pay homage to the great martyr in pilgrimage. And so we see how even in England there were special things that we should remember in this whole thing. With the coming of modern times, with the coming of the Protestant Reformation, and so forth, pilgrimages seem to decline. But with Vatican II, all of a sudden, this is one of the blessings that came about from the Vatican Council, the renewed sense of liturgy, a new sense of celebration, a new sense of public display of the faith came about in so many ways. And so pilgrimages got back on the map. So when the bishops decided to have a year of Eucharistic Revival to help restore faith in the Catholic doctrine of the real presence of Jesus, not just the symbolic presence of Jesus in the appearances of the host, the appearances of the bread and wine after the consecration of the Mass, they chose also to add pilgrimage to the preparations. And so this great sense of the New York State pilgrimage to where, of all places, Auriesville, New York, about an hour west of Buffalo, the great shrine of the North American Martyrs. They picked it out as a place where people could rally. Probably more people would be coming from upstate New York. It's a little bit of more of a hike from us here on Long Island, but we're fortunate enough here at St. Francis to have gotten a bus at a very economical rate. We're going to spend one night out rather than two to make it more affordable to people. Plus, we've also taken up a collection to help defray some of the expenses, okay? So I hope that we're going to have a very beautiful, I know from the Lord's point of view, it's already a beautiful event. And if human response is what it should be, it's going to also be an event that will be very memorable to the people who made it. So the feast, the shrine, of course, is the great shrine, the historical shrine of the North American Martyrs, those Jesuit priests, those French Jesuit priests and lay brothers that were put to death by the Iroquois Indian here in upstate New York, and probably in some instances by the Hurons up around Lake Huron up in Canada. There's a shrine to the martyrs that's very beautiful. In fact, in some ways, even more beautiful than ours here in New York State. But nonetheless, They're both very famous and very worthwhile visiting. So anyway, the whole idea, of course, is that there was warfare for many decades now between the Hurons, which were a large tribe centered basically in Canada, around the area of Lake Huron and Toronto, Canada, and Kingston, Ontario, and places like that. Okay, and the Iroquois Indians, who inhabited pretty much the Mohawk Valley from around Albany area over to around the Finger Lakes. Okay, and they were a fierce tribe. They were more militaristic than the Hurons, but the Hurons, I believe, are more numerous in numbers, so it was evenly balanced out. But the missionaries were put to death because they were looked upon as allies of the opposite side. Okay, then this is what the poor French came to bring the peace of Jesus to these people, and they suffered for it with their lives, but they did make an impact. And of course, in terms of the history of the founding of the church in the United States, they're an integral part of it. Now, of course, they're not maybe as influential on the whole history of the development of the United States. I mean, they're not going to be as important as Thomas Jefferson and George Washington, these martyrs. But it was interesting that even in the days when we were studying church history in Catholic grammar school, the North American Martyrs were always featured. And somebody said, well, they were more important than Thomas Jefferson. Well, we don't have to debate secular importance versus spiritual importance. But the plain fact that these wonderful men were so dedicated that some of them even returned after they were tortured the first time, so that they could experience once more the self-giving that was involved in that. St. Isaac Jogues, for instance, was tortured and mutilated very badly when he was taken back and recuperated back in France. But he wanted to get back to Canada and to upstate New York, to be with his Native Americans and teach them about the goodness of Jesus and God's love for them. So he came back, and then he suffered, of course, martyrdom. And that's the site marks the ravine where the bodies were thrown in shallow graves for the first year of their interment. Then later on, they were reburied again. So there's a beautiful rotunda there that seats 10,000 people. We hope we're going to fill it. I think we will. And there'll be a joyful and an eventful day for everybody who comes. So we're going to keep you posted. Now, next week we'll give this is the prelude here. We had kind of announced the fact that we're going on pilgrimage. Next week, of course, we'll have completed it by that time, and we'll give you a full report. I suspect that many people will come back joyful, renewed in faith, and that some of the goals of the Eucharistic Revival will take place. Remember, it's a sad thing when people are taking the Eucharist too casually, or coming to Mass even too casually, or absenting themselves too casually from Mass, because they're no longer in touch with the real presence of Jesus in the sacrament. But Christ is waiting for us in this sacrament in a unique and powerful way. The Eucharist is the sacrament of sacraments. Okay, all of the whole sacramental system of baptism, penance, confirmation, and so forth, marriage and orders and all of that, all veer toward the Eucharist, all focused on the Eucharist, Christ's true presence under the forms of the bread and the wine. So stay tuned, everybody. We'll have a wonderful presentation. We'll have a wonderful experience to reflect upon and bounce back to you. And looking forward to having this moment to share with you the joys that the Lord gives to those who are open their hearts to Him and allow Him to take in their own hearts true Eucharistic revival, not for granted, but to implement it and so grow in holiness. Thank you so much, everybody. God bless you for today.